let's talk to the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps. Good morning to you, Mr. Shapps. What are we doing to help those people who hear those air raid sirens, desperately trying to get out of Kyiv, make the journey to the border, eventually get to Calais, see a note on the door saying, go to Brussels or Paris, that's where you can pick up your visa? Why can't we help them more?
Yeah, genuinely haunting sounds hearing those sirens, and the scenes that we're seeing on your programme and TV is unbelievable and pure evil. To answer your question, the very first thing we're doing is giving more humanitarian assistance than any other nation, £400 million so far, plus all the donations from the British people, in addition to that money, helping to get people transferred through Poland. President Zelensky has asked us to ensure that people stay as close as possible to Ukraine, but of course we also want to do our bit back home. So we've given immediate sanctuary to 20,000 Ukrainians who are in this country, so that obviously their rights are extended, their visas are extended, and then in addition opened up a scheme which is unlimited in nature for the families of those who are already here. That could be up to 200,000 people. And over and above that, we're also going to have a sponsorship route as well.
My question specifically was about those people who are arriving in Calais. Priti Patel said the British government is not turning anybody around or turning anybody back. We spoke to a family this morning. He is a British passport holder, but his wife is Ukrainian. His daughter has handwritten a note to the Prime Minister. She's only 17. Dear Prime Minister, please help me and my family and the people of Ukraine. We've escaped the bombing. Ukraine's under attack. Vladimir Putin is killing innocent people. I'm lucky. I have reached Calais, but I'm not allowed into the UK. Please be kind and give Ukrainian refugees a place of safety. Thank you. The Home Secretary says people like that are not being turned around. They have been turned around. They've had to travel from Calais to Brussels in order to be processed. Why can't we set up a system in Calais?
Yeah, what we want to do is, as people come out of Ukraine, and the vast majority of people are still in the neighbouring countries, but as they travel across Europe, is to get that visa as they travel across Europe. So we now have stations open at much larger numbers. We had only 800 appointments available. We now have 6,000 appointments available.
Not in Calais, Mr. Shapps.
Not directly in Calais. So in Calais, we've got an issue, as you know, because this has been covered many times by you, of a very long-term issue where people have been trafficked over, and we want to make sure we keep this entirely separate from that. We have, or are rather, setting up processes in Lille in order to help people, and as they travel west, because you have to get to Calais through a lot of other locations, make sure that there are stations all the way along so that people are able to get processed for their visa. We do need to take biometrics for adults. We need to know who's coming to the country, though not for that 17-year-old, because we've scrapped the rules to require biometrics for children. But we do need to know, of course, and people would expect us to know, who is coming into the country. So those visas do need to be processed somewhere.
Okay.
We want to see that done as quickly and as
Mr. Shapps, am I hearing that it is possible to set up a processing centre in Calais? You just haven't got round to it, or you're not planning to do that? Because at the moment, we don't seem to be addressing the fact that hundreds of people, Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, said that 600 people seeking to reach the UK have been turned back at Calais. I just don't seem to be able to get an answer to the question, why haven't we sent up a centre in Calais to save 600 people the pain of having to turn round?
Look, I don't want to mislead you. I'm not the Home Secretary, so I don't want to give you information which I don't know to be accurate. What I do want to say is that if people are travelling across, the idea is they get the visas before they get to the border, to the coast. Lille will be a possibility, Paris, Berlin, Brussels and other locations. With regard to the specifics of people who get there, I know that the Home Secretary is working very hard on this. We do not want to see this mixed up with the wider issue of people traffickers and criminal gangs in Calais. And so we don't want to attract people to Calais without having the paperwork resolved in the first place before they get there, because we don't want to create a sort of double problem or a further reason why people aren't able to travel. But the Home Secretary, of course, will be looking at the best way to do this. I know she's already hugely increased the number of appointments available. And I did want to correct one thing I heard actually Yvette Cooper say earlier, which is that there were no appointments available. I've checked in with Brussels and I've checked in with Paris. There are walk-in available appointments at both of those locations right now.
All right. Well, look, this is a very important aspect of the story, but we have other aspects to cover with you. Let's do that now. You have announced that basically Britain is now no-fly zone for any Russian aircraft of any description, and already one civilian aircraft has been impounded. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been holding an aircraft actually at Farnborough for the last few days, where I suspected that a Russian oligarch may have come in on that aircraft. I won't go into detail. I already had the powers from the very first day of the invasion. I said that no Russian Aeroflot, the commercial airlines, and from the next day, no private Russian aircraft could fly here. So we already had that in place. However, what I wanted to do was really close off some potential loopholes, which includes an aircraft, for example, flagged, as is the case of this aircraft in Farnborough, under a Luxembourg flag, potentially carrying a Russian oligarch or something like that, and then being able to fly off. So it's for that reason that I increased the powers in a piece of legislation that I signed last night to make sure that we really are not in a situation where Russian oligarchs feel they're able to come and go on their private jets. And, you know, there are wider issues here, of course, to do with gas and oil and, you know, making sure that we're not funding Putin's evil war with the proceeds of blood money. So there are many different ways that we're cracking down, and this aviation law is one addition to that.
The other big story this morning, of course, is that at least 4 British soldiers, one of them a 19-year-old, are believed to be on their way to Ukraine to fight. And the Ministry of Defence have issued a very, very toughly worded statement, as I'm sure you know, basically saying they'll be court-martialed if they don't come back, because they're very, very worried that if these men do get into combat directly with Russian soldiers, and if they're taken prisoner, Putin could use it as an excuse to up the game, basically, and say that he was now in direct conflict with British soldiers. It's a very dangerous moment. What are your views on it?
Well, just to be absolutely clear, you cannot go and fight. If you're in the British Army, you cannot just get up and go and fight. Of course, that's you know, inappropriate behaviour, and you'd expect the army to have some very, very strict rules in place as they do. We are helping, as I mentioned right at the top, perhaps more than any other country, certainly in terms of funding, £400 million, and even in terms of assistance and aid. And
what I want to hear from you is what your feeling is about the danger if these men do end up getting into combat with Russian troops, and that's on the record, and they're seen, or they're taken prisoner, or they're killed. How dangerous do you think that is in terms of the situation with Russia, with Putin?
Look, there's a big difference, of course, between Britain sending its army in and some people who are breaking with our law and going to do it. But you know, clearly this is a dangerous situation, and clearly we want to make sure that the assistance we're providing is done in an official way, like the anti-tank missiles that we provided prior to and during this conflict, and like the 22,000 Ukrainians that we've trained. But if you want to help, then certainly there's a lot of different ways in which the Brits are helping, particularly on the borders, particularly the British Army helping with that supply line of humanitarian aid.
Will your cabinet colleague Liz Truss must be biting her lip this morning, because it was only a few days ago in a television interview live that she encouraged people to do exactly what these men are doing.
Well, I think it's a slightly different issue, actually, because this is specifically people who are actually in the army, I think we're talking about here. But whatever it is, the situation's very straightforward. We do not want to see people go and directly involve themselves in that way. If you want to help, and you are helping want to help in a military way, the army is actually there, right on the border, helping with that humanitarian corridor and helping to get goods and services in. But no, there's no route in, as the MOD have said. It would be a court-martial offence.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Minister. Strange times, aren't they? Strange times.